Now I'd like to focus on some of the detail of the response. You've mentioned Team A and Team B. Which team were you in?
Oh, I'm always on Team A. I prefer to be in the hospital and health system during the hurricane because, we put together procedures and plans, and we have some advanced planning for the hurricane. But then once the hurricane starts to hit, a variety of different events start to occur, and you need to adapt your disaster plan with a dose of reality, if you will. And so you change your plan, adjust your plan, and lead through those issues. Usually, by the time Team B comes in, things are stabilized. So as a leader, I find that I am better off to be on site in one of my sites and available to have a pharmacy command center, if you will, to make sure that we're checking in with our sites to make sure that things are going or that we're adapting to things post-hurricane, especially in that immediate time frame afterwards.
Mm-hmm. So you're there monitoring the situation. Did you find you had to make adaptations as you went along? And what kind of patients or casualties was the hospital dealing with?
Sure. With Hurricane Ian, and once again, the major devastation was from the storm surge. We found that, first of all, the hospitals, the inpatient pharmacy of the inpatient pharmacies in each hospital were relatively stable with the patient volume. Our biggest surge was in patients appearing in the emergency departments post-hurricane. So a lot of infections and need for tetanus immunizations and so forth. So now imagine that you're in a house, and let's just say that you're in a house that's got 3 feet worth of water that's now in your first floor, and you're waiting around in your house, but then there's also been some penetration where there's either glass or nails or something like that. So now your skin is submerged in the water, and you've got a puncture wound from either glass or some other foreign object, nail, board, anything. So the risk of an infection of cellulitis is quite high. And then you come into the hospital and you present that you got punctured and a laceration and underwater. So most likely we wish you would have already had your up-to-date tetanus, but if you didn't, then we give you that, but then we need to give you an antibiotic to treat the infection. So that's a common scenario. So lots of surge of patients that came in. The other thing is that in preparation for the hurricane, let's say that you're a chronic obstructive pulmonary disease patient and you weren't doing well before the hurricane, and now you've got no electricity, no air conditioning, no lights in your home, and now you're struggling because also your nebulizer is not working because there's no electricity. And so post-hurricane, we've got a lot of people with chronic conditions that are now going to need an admission to the emergency department. So, for example, a COPD patient, as I just mentioned, without their nebulization at home is maybe going to get into medical difficulty. So you have a lot of patients presenting like that maybe have chronic diseases that are now showing up because they're exacerbated from the hurricane conditions. So it's not like the hurricane passes and everything's okay. You have to think of the loss of utilities that come with that. And the first one that usually goes is electricity. But don't forget that you probably lost the internet too. And then you've got penetration. So you might have, and water rising. So you might have lost water, or you might have lost or ability to eliminate sewage. So there's lots of different conditions that occur post-hurricane.
Very interesting. And were there any unexpected problems that you had to tackle?
The biggest one that came with Hurricane Ian that pharmacy was challenged with and also came to the response of is the only places with electricity were the hospitals, because we have an emergency power plant at each one of our hospital facilities. So fortunately, the lights never went out at the hospitals. At each one of our 5 hospitals, there was nothing more than a 3-second delay in conversion to emergency power. So we never lost power. Well, that's good for the inpatient pharmacies, of course, but in regards to the outpatient pharmacies, and I've got 5 of those pharmacies. You might call them a retail pharmacy, a community pharmacy, but I've got 5 of those, 1 in each one of the hospitals. But those retail pharmacies were the only retail pharmacies open in Fort Myers for the first 48 hours post-hurricane, because nobody else had power. They were wiped out from power. So people would have to leave the county to find a pharmacy that was open and had not only lights, but their computer running, and everything runs off by the computers nowadays. So if with no computer, you could almost not fill a prescription. So anyway, my 5 retail pharmacies were the supplier of prescriptions for outpatients throughout Lee County, and Lee County being roughly somewhere, depending on the population and the time of year, up to about 1 million people in that area. And so we had a surge in our number of prescriptions that were being provided by our outpatient pharmacies or retail pharmacies.